And ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Common Man Show, coming to you from the inner Sanctum Sanctorum here in Austin, Texas, and brought to you exclusively by The Scoop on El Paso. That's right, folks. TheScoopOnElPaso.com is El Paso's one-stop website to help you find out the what, when, and where of El Paso. It's managed by El Pasoans for El Pasoans. And folks, we have got a great program for you here tonight. As we mentioned before, as we progress with this whole new program of the Common Man Show, we have wanted to make a call out to our politicians. So instead of having you listen to us here day in and day out talking about my personal opinions, we want to reach out to those that are leading us and leading our community. And so this election season for 2012, what we have done is that we have reaching out to our candidates and asking them to come in to the Common Man Show and talk about what they are doing and talk about the issues that are going on in their community. Now, granted, because we are talking about programs here in El Paso, we are trying to do our best to connect with those individuals from El Paso that are leaders and future leaders so that they can tell us what is going on in El Paso today and what their expectations are going to be in the future. So we are reaching out to them. We are presenting a program where they are an environment where they are able to come in and talk about their campaign without any interruptions or with minimal interruptions or the interruptions of commercials and people calling in saying that they don't agree with you or whatever the case may be. It is an informative program that we are going to be doing starting today, where we will be asking those questions that any voter or any potential voter in El Paso or in your community that would want to ask your politician or your candidate and see where they stand on certain issues. Now, today we have a very special guest with us. He has agreed to come on and talk to us about his campaign for District 78 in El Paso. So without much further ado, allow me to introduce Dee Margo, State Representative for District 78 in El Paso. Mr. Margo, how are you, sir?
I'm fine, Gabe. Glad to be here.
And I want to thank you again for spending time with us as we talk about your campaign and see how things are going. We've got actually quite a bit, and we understand that you have some other stuff going on today, and we appreciate you being able to spend time with us. But we wanted to talk actually a lot about what's going on in El Paso. There's quite a bit that's going on. I was very surprised. You know, we just went through a campaign cycle where we had the primaries, and we had state representative, a U.S. representative, Sylvester Reyes, get defeated by Beto O'Rourke, who is a local El Pasoan, as we like to mention on that end. And one of the things that's come up in discussions in El Paso, and it was something that I wanted to ask you not as Representative Margo, but as Dee Margo, who is a voter in El Paso. You know, we've had a lot of individuals that have been crossing over, if you will, where the major complaint that's been going on is that we've had people say, hey, I'm a Republican, so I'm going to vote for this Democrat primary, and vice versa. And a lot of people are getting upset over the fact that that is occurring. Now, as we mentioned before, as you being a voter in El Paso, do you have any issues of people doing that?
Well, Gabe, we don't have an open primary system in the sense that California has a completely non-partisan open primary system, as they just instituted. But we have an open primary system for candidates. Basically, anybody can sign up for any party and get on the ballot for the primary, as long as they can meet the filing requirements as to dollars or signatures. And you can vote in any primary. You cannot vote in a runoff if you did not vote in that primary to begin with. But I don't have any problem with open primaries. In this case, the crossover has been shown to, the crossover of Republicans to the Democratic primary has been shown to, I think, contribute greatly to the Beto O'Rourke win over Congressman Reyes.
Understandable. And I've got to tell you, you know, I was doing some background checks on situations that occurred like this, and it's been rampant back and forth. And personally, for me, I don't see an issue with it. You know, it's a matter of choice, and it's a matter of wanting to make your voice heard in one fashion or another. So, you know, for me, I'm like, hey, you know, by all means, enjoy. You know, it's those things that occur. Now, there was another item that I want to talk to you before we get on with part of the reason why we have you here today. But you know, I've been in El Paso for years, and we've been hit within the past probably, I want to say 5-6 years maybe, with such a scandal that's been going on in El Paso concerning the item or the corruption that's been going on. We've had, you know, people that are accused of money laundering or trying to curry favor with certain bids, if you will. And now we've gone to the point now where we have a school district that has been rocked with a scandal that has affected not only the school district's reputation, but also the children. And I wanted to see what your thoughts were about the whole situation that's been going on with EPISD.
Well, as an El Pasoan and as a voter and as a father of children who attended EPISD schools, I have great issues and problems with what's going on, and they're apparent for the trustees' failure to fulfill their fiduciary duties to the extent they need to, given what's transpired and what's coming forth. But unfortunately, we've gone through this stuff before. You may recall years ago, Isleta had to be under a court master. Mm-hmm. And it's a shame, but I think we're getting our arms around it. The delegation is looking at passing legislation to change the voting patterns for trustees from plurality to majority. Right now it's a plurality vote, so you don't have runoffs. It's whoever gets the most within an election wins. And then secondly, to move the election cycles from the spring, where you have very low turnout, to a November election cycle, which typically has a higher turnout, as well as should be less costly because it's not a separately run election at a time when there aren't very many other ballot issues. So there has to be a higher level of fiduciary responsibility. I mean, I had to pass a bill. Well, you remember in the 81st session, Representative Marquez had to pass a bill on ethics for our county, and then I had to somewhat continue it in a bill I passed last year, where it restricted board members at the University Medical Center from the hospital district from being employees of the hospital district or employees of the county, which has basically simply stated very inherent conflicts of interest. So they could not seem to agree on that at their board, so we were forced to pass a bill that said you can't be an employee of the county and you can't be an employee of the hospital district if you're going to serve on the UMC board.
Oh, excellent. Okay. So now, have you been approached by any of the parents in your district about what's been going on in El Paso?
Quite candidly, Gabe, what I'm getting approached on are the STAR tests and things like that, not on the corruption issue, which is, as you know, has been made the front page of the newspapers here. Mm-hmm. So, but the biggest issues are the STAR test and things of that nature.
Okay, understandable. And we had some fine issues with that STAR testing as well. I've been able to talk to certain individuals that have taken the test. I have a daughter that's going to school in El Paso still, and I have certain friends that are educators. And yeah, I'd imagine we're probably hearing about the same thing in regards to the to the testing, and of course here in Central Texas, so much has been said about it that it's just amazing as to some of the stuff that's the concerns that the parents have had, obviously, with what's going on, and we'll probably reserve that for a later discussion. I'm actually looking at something else that's related to that testing, if it's okay, because I do, although I do want to touch upon it, Mr. Margo, I do want to talk a little bit more about some of the stuff that's going on with the district, and especially some of the items, I guess, that may be coming up with the discussions going on against your Democrat counterpart that's running for your seat, which is, I believe, Joe Moody, and some of the other items that are going to be going on in El Paso. Obviously, one of the big things that occurred that I wanted to bring up and touch a little bit more upon was that in Texas we had this big issue going on with the redistricting, and when we last talked, we had you had mentioned that, and correct me if I'm wrong on this part, where there was the discussion was going on concerning the redistricting, and the El Paso delegation, which included yourself and the other representatives in El Paso, had come up with a plan to cover the El Paso area. Now, with everything that was going on with the lawsuits and all that stuff, how much, if any, was there any effect with the redistricting? Did it change your district at all, or did it do anything? Did it, was there any adjustments?
For clarification purposes, what we referred to was that the bill that came out of the legislature related to El Paso, that we as a delegation, the 4 Democrats and I as your only Republican, all agreed to our district lines, and it was not forced upon us by a Republican majority legislature, which is how it's characterized in the media. We drew our own districts, and the litigation that ensued created the courts to redraw them. When the courts redrew them, they were accused of overreaching. They specifically changed my District 78 significantly. The Supreme Court put that on hold, put a stay on, and sent it back to the judges, the federal judges in San Antonio, and basically told them to do a better job. The end result is, to answer your question, the redistricting that we have in El Paso is not what was passed by the state legislature last year. However, it is not significantly different, with a few exceptions, and those primary exceptions occur between my District 78 and Marissa Marquez's District 77. There were some precincts on the west side that I gave up, and I picked up some more in the northeast. But otherwise, the rest of the districts all remained from 75, which was Chinti Quintanilla and now will be Mary Gonzalez and Naomi Gonzalez and Joe Pickett. Their districts were fairly stable from what we drew in out of the legislature. So the big changes were what were between Marissa and me.
Oh, okay. Well, that works then. Yeah, I wasn't too sure if they had made any significant changes where all of a sudden, all these lines all of a sudden came up and changed the whole districts for not only yourself but everybody else, as you mentioned. Now, one of the other items that I wanted to bring up before we move on to something else that I think is going to be kind of interesting, when we last talked, and I've got to bring this up because a lot of people, especially now, have this whole push and that are trying to be very pro-Hispanic, very pro-Mexican, very pro. I don't know how else to put it, but they try to push for those individuals that are of Hispanic descent or Mexican descent. And one of the items that we did not get a touch upon when we last talked, but it's something that you have brought up to other people's attention, was concerning you and the fact that you actually are Hispanic.
That is correct.
Yes, and I remember, I believe you had talked to a couple people, and they may have not believed you about that whole thing, and we sat down during one of our breaks where we talked about that, and just so that everyone else can know that there is a lineage, I guess, if you will, and so that people cannot accuse you or accuse you of saying something wrong. If you want to touch a little bit more upon your relationship to the Hispanic community.
My great-great-grandfather came up the Mississippi from New Orleans, or actually came, not the Mississippi, but came up the Rio Grande and settled in Rio Grande City, Texas in 1850. He married a woman from Mexico by the name of Sines in 1854. My grandfather was one of 10 children and the first to speak English. He was number 3. All of my family are Ramirez, Margo, Guerrera, Guerra, come from Rio Grande City, Texas. Turns out in the state legislature, I have 2 relationships. Rafael Anchia, who's a Democratic representative from Dallas, is married to my cousin Marisa Ramirez.
Wow.
Marisa's grandfather and my grandfather were siblings. Ryan Guillen, who is the state representative, Democratic state representative for Rio Grande City now, his great-grandmother was a Margo. As I say, my grandfather ended up going to the University of Texas and then Galveston Med School and ended up moving up to Oklahoma City. He kind of left the family, as they say, but he ended up kind of remaining as somewhat the patriarch of the family. And I still have relatives there, and yes, I am 25% Hispanic.
Very nice.
My Spanish speaking skills are pretty poor, but everybody else in the family and my family is very fluent, and so I just do the best I can.
I understand perfectly, and it was just, and I had to bring that up, and I apologize if it caused any type of embarrassment or any uncomfortableness, because I am just one of those individuals that I don't look for the ethnic background for the candidate of choice. I want to know about the person and what their values are when it comes to related topics that are affecting the community. And just so that anybody can try to, which they will, I can almost guarantee you that somebody will. I wanted to go ahead and have that presented here so that if there's any type of contrast or any type of negativity about, somebody saying that you're not Hispanic, well, we now know for the fact that you do have a Hispanic heritage or a Mexican heritage, however people want to say it, but you are, as some people will say, you are of the people. So, but I do want to.
And I also, I'll mention my daughter-in-law is Cuban, and I've got my oldest son's getting married to a girl from Barcelona, Spain, on July the 6th.
Oh, very nice, very nice. Well, congratulations.
So I think we cover the Latino spectrum pretty well.
Excellent. Yes, I believe you do. Now, let's, if we can, I want to touch upon some of the hot stuff that's going to be coming up that you may be asked upon this campaign season, and what may be as to what will be the future decisions that are going to be going on, not only in El Paso, but in Texas in general. Obviously, with the economy being the way it is, we've had some highs and lows when it comes to unemployment. I believe we're sitting at right now, and these are based on some of the last numbers, where we had, I think, 6.9% unemployment for the state. Texas, or El Paso, I think, is sitting at about 8.1%. And I'll give you a good number, or a different number. Here in Travis County, where we're doing this program from, I think they're sitting like at 5.5%.
That's correct.
Percent unemployment. Now, as a state representative, You know, we talked to, let me add on to this part. We talked to Barbara Carrasco and we talked to the other representatives for U.S. District 16. And we asked them what can be done. And they've admitted that they cannot do much of anything in regards to lowering the unemployment other than providing certain venues or certain opportunities at the national level. As a state representative, what can be done to try to, I guess, keep El Paso in track with not only the rest of the state, but with other counties that are similar to El Paso County?
Well, I've been involved in the private sector. I've been involved with our Regional Economic Development Corporation and economic development at the Chamber of Commerce, and I was heavily involved in the base realignment and closure BRAC process to bring in the expansion we have at Fort Bliss. The key from a state legislature standpoint is, you know, to keep keep Texas business friendly, where people want to come in and expand their existing businesses or move in with new businesses. We're getting a lot of migration still from California. CEO magazine has rated Texas the #1 state to do business in, from taxation to education to overall environment. The key to the legislature is not to mess it up. So, you know, given the fragile nature of our economy in the last session, that's why some were clamoring for tax increases for various projects, including education. I personally felt like the economy was too fragile to have tax increases, and it would be too detrimental. We've cut the cost of, Texas has probably the lowest cost of government of any of the 50 states, and there are those out there who say we should never grow our government any more than the population growth, and I'm inclined to agree overall. I mean, there's got to be some flexibility. Mm-hmm. But the biggest thing that we can do as a state is to keep it as low tax, business friendly as we can, so we're attracting other jobs and investment that might have gone elsewhere. And I think for the most part, the legislature's done a pretty darn good job in doing that. And but you know, we've cut about as much as we can cut potentially, and we're going to have to continue to look at how are we going to grow our economy, not just cut the costs. You've got to grow the revenues as well,
right? And
we're trying to do that. So,
okay.
But that's the overall. The fact we have no state income tax. You know, property values are going up again. They were going down before. Sales tax revenues have gone up double digit, which is very positive. Sales taxes are over 50% of our state revenues. So things are on the upside. They're not the way they ought to be. El Paso's unemployment is a bit of a laggard and below with the rest of the state. But part of it has to do with our immigration and the population here, and frankly, it's our education level is a lot of that. We've got to do more to provide for an educated populace, and that's not just secondary ed, but it's at the technical school, college degree level as well. Every study points to education as the key to job growth.
Understandable. Now, you mentioned about state taxes. And I've attended a few of the functions, or conservative functions here in Austin. And one of the hot topics that's been going on with state taxes is obviously looking at the option of gambling, you know, passing a bill that would allow gambling to be legal in the state, or the possibility of having a state income tax. Now, where do you normally stand on those positions? I can tell you here in Central Texas, there's a lot of people that don't want to have either one of them, you know. But if it's something that we have to look at, where would you stand on that side of the discussion?
Well, Gabe, you're asking two questions. The first is, where am I on state income tax? And the answer is, I'm totally against it. Mm-hmm. I think that's the reason. The reason Texas continues to grow and be considered, as I said, by CEO Magazine as the #1 state in which to do business. I think this is for the second, third, or fourth year in a row, with the highest taxation states being California, New York, and one other one, I can't remember which. No, I'm not in favor of state income tax. I think there are things we need to do to improve our tax policies and the especially as we deal with the franchise margins tax and things like that. But no, I'm not in favor of a state income tax at all. I think that would just be 2 steps backwards. As far as gambling is concerned in El Paso, from our perspective, 70% of El Paso has been polled, says they want gambling, and they want the Tiguas to be able to have their casinos.
Right.
And given the fact that we have casino gambling in Sunland Park, abutting El Paso in New Mexico, and dollars are going there, I don't have a problem with that. If there were things differently than that, no. But the problem is between the Indian tribes and the racetracks and everywhere else is getting their agreement to what type of legislation ought to be brought forth, and thus far they've not been in agreement. But I have told in every public setting and every time I've ever been asked the question since I started running for office that I would be supportive of that, and I've told the Tiguas as well.
Excellent. Okay, that works. Now, going with the taxes theme, I do have a couple of other questions involving that. Obviously, we've seen some increases with taxes. You even mentioned that we may have. Let me back on that comment. We've seen some increased production with oil. I think one of the big things that's been talked about nationally is that with improvements with oil refining, or the refining of oil and production of oil, that things have been getting a little bit streamlined, and of course with that streamlining you're able to get more stuff out. And you mentioned
with the hydraulic fracking, we're getting much more. Our oil and gas revenues are way up 40-some-odd% because of fracking and the ability to extract oil and gas from shale.
Right. Now, with this improvement that's going on, are we looking at, and of course we've got these, we've got these other items that we have to be addressed at a state issue. Are we looking at the possibility of an increase of state fees? I don't, you mentioned that property taxes are going to be going up, or they look like they're coming up after they've been down. Are we looking at a possibility of increases in state fees?
In state taxes or fees? Yeah. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, sir.
Well, they're two different items, but I don't see a lot of appetite for that right now. I would say, given the makeup of the legislature and the still fragile nature of our economy, no. I think there are probably some ways to be more efficient and to improve things, and there are some studies being done right now. And as you know, I am on appropriations, so we're looking at different things. We can't continue to raise property taxes. That affects too many fixed income people, and we've got to have there's litigation going on regarding our school taxes, and some of that's going to have to sort out on how we do that. And it's all as a result of our Constitution, which bans a state income tax.
Right.
So, yeah, there are going to be issues, but our revenues are growing this time, well beyond what we were looking at when we entered the 82nd session in January of 2011. I think the 83rd session will have maybe a little more flexibility, but at the same time, to be candid, we've also done some deferrals and some underfunding in this budget. We've deferred $2.3 billion in payment to the Foundation School Program, which is public education. We're going to make the payment that would normally be due, the 24th payment over a 2-year cycle that would normally be due in August of 2013. We're going to delay it until September of 2013, which pushes it into the next fiscal year, and you can only do that one time. And then I have great concerns over the funding we've set aside for Medicaid, the federal match that we're required to do. It's conceivable that we have underfunded expected caseload under Medicaid as much as $4 billion, and that's going to have to be due and payable in 2013 when we get back in session. So we've got some expenses on the horizon that are concerning, but I think we'll be able to cover it, and that's what we've got the rainy day fund for.
Okay. Alrighty, that works. Now, you mentioned something a little bit real quick about education, and it's kind of one of the big topics for me. As I've mentioned before, I have family still in El Paso, and I've got educators in El Paso. One of the items, obviously, that we keep on hearing, basically almost anywhere or everywhere, not only within the state but within the nation, is, you know, if we just had a little bit more, and everything would be fine, and you know, we're all fine and dandy. But some startling numbers actually came out of Central Texas during a recent convention where the educators had mentioned that on certain individuals or certain children that may be at risk or troubled children, if you will, we're spending 5 or 6 times the allotted amount per year for these students to advance for the next grade level. And they've got their budgets, they've got their things that they're doing. Are we looking to try to fund them still, or try to fund the education system more than what it is right now, or is the message that the states, or that you feel that the state's going to be telling the school districts, is that we've got to live within our means and try to improve our procedures and improve everything that's going on?
Well, Gabe, if I understood your question, is how can we best fund education, and are there going to be excess dollars?
Basically, are they going to be asking us for more money? I mean, if they ask for more money, what is the state going to respond, or what would members?
Well, when you look at it at the big picture, we made tough choices last time, and the choices we made as a legislature were between health care, Medicaid, and education. We split the dollars between those two. 95% of the general revenue budget of the state of Texas goes to education, Medicaid, and our corrections penal system, prison system. That's 95% of what we control. The rest are federal matching dollars for education or Medicaid. You know, we don't have a lot of room. My position on appropriations last time was if we're not going to give more dollars, let's make the dollars more flexible for the districts to determine where they ought to be applied in the most efficient manner. We made some incremental changes in furloughs and those kind of cost-saving issues for the districts, but I'm not sure it's going to be all money. I'm not sure what we're going to have to spend. I do know that we only funded for 170,000 new students over the 2-year biennium, and that's not going to be enough given our population growth. There are going to have to be some things done, but I think there are efficiencies and there are creativities based on the teachers I'm talking to, from math teachers to principals to the administration. Give you an example, El Paso and Isleta school districts have both, and Canutillo, first of all, Canutillo's told me they've had no layoffs, and they've changed their they've increased their compensation. It was just announced in the newspaper in the last couple of weeks that both Isleta and El Paso have given raises to their teachers.
Right.
So whatever we were doing hasn't had an immediate, dramatic, draconian impact on budgets related to compensation. Now, maybe somebody would argue we would have had more otherwise in compensation, et cetera. But the bottom line is we're doing the best we can given this economy and making those choices that we had to make, tough choices, between education and health care. And that was the best I could do. We did. We were not living in an environment where we were going to go out and raise more taxes, more money by tax increases. That would have hurt the economy even more so.
Okay, I understand that part. Now, one of the other items that's been going on, obviously, is with there's actually been a couple of other hot topics that are going on, but I want to move on to one of the last ones that we want to talk about today before we wrap things up here, Mr. Margo, and it's concerning the issue of same-sex marriages. It's been a hot topic in all the states, obviously. Here, like I've mentioned before, in Travis County and a few other places around this area in Central Texas, there's been, the back and forth as to whether or not the state should look at that possibility of allowing gay and lesbian couples to marry. With the environment the way it is right now, would you support some type of same-sex marriage or a type of a civil union or neither one of them?
Well, from my vantage point, those are two separate questions to a great extent. Mm-hmm. I believe marriage is between a man and a woman, and I'm not in favor of same-sex marriage. However, if there is for legal civil unions, that's something different. To me, it's not marriage, but it allows dissolution of property. It allows to make sure you can take care of certain benefits and things of that nature. In a legal setting, I'm in favor of it. And it's no different than legalizing what becomes a common law marriage with a man and a woman. Right. So, as I say, I believe marriage is between a man and a woman, and I'm not in favor of marriage in the context of same sex. However, from a civil union standpoint, a legal civil union, if it's required, I would be in favor of that.
Okay, that works. I understand that one perfectly. Now, obviously, you're going into we have the runoffs coming up next month, and then I believe a lot of the politicians and a lot of the incumbents, including yourself, are going to be going into high gear with this election cycle that's coming up. And you have a gentleman from the other side, from the Democrat side, by the name of Joe Moody. And one of the things that I did want to ask you, because I'll be perfectly honest with you, I have not heard a lot of negativity brought on about you. There's been some concerns and there's been some comments, and that's fine and dandy. But when it comes to trying to hit you hard and saying, oh my God, Mr. Margo did this or Dee Margo did that or whatever the case may be, there hasn't been a lot. And one of the things that I was noticing going into your competition's website was a comment that he said concerning a broken promise involving, I want to go ahead and try to get some of the information here, was involving a campaign promise that was made for the pre-kindergarten, and what had occurred there, where apparently there was some funding that was supposed to be going on, and apparently it wasn't, and then all of a sudden people are saying, oh, well, he has a campaign promise, and we can only attack you on that. Was there anything in particular that you're aware of on that regards, or that allegation that had been made?
Well, you're talking about pre-K.
Yeah.
Education.
Yes, sir. My apologies. Yes, it's pre-K.
And there were some cuts made to pre-K. I filed a bill with Mark Shelton, who's now running for state senate, for pre-K education. So I was very supportive of pre-K. I think it's critical. I've got a new granddaughter, fifth generation El Pasoan. I want to make sure she has all the opportunities everyone else had. But I think what you're referring to is that on Moody's website, didn't he try to slam me on failure to work on pre-K or whatever it was?
That's what it was.
But fact is, we tried. Mark and I tried to pass this, and it just frankly didn't pass. There were a lot of other pieces of legislation I worked on that didn't pass. One in particular I was testifying on last week for adult basic education, and shifting the responsibility of, we have somewhere around the neighborhood of we have somewhere in the state of Texas about 3 million functionally illiterate Texans. And our adult basic education, which is designed to address their needs from a GED to vocational training and beyond, we're only dealing with about 100,000 of them. It's pretty pathetic. And I want to shift the responsibility from the TEA, which is primarily focused on secondary education, to higher ed, which deals with people 21 years of old and older, which is the majority of the illiterate Texans we're trying to deal with. So my bill passed the House last time by 100 votes and never made it out of committee in the Senate. So that's the kind of things that you have to deal with, and we're doing Speaker Strauss allowed that to be one of the interim studies, which I had personally requested of him, and as such, we're moving ahead. And should I be reelected, hopefully, then I will bring that bill back up.
Okay, that works. Now, I know you're pressed for time right now. I want to go ahead and ask you one last big question. If possible, if you can let us and the viewing audience and those people that are going to be listening to this program and watching this program at a later time, what makes you the better candidate for El Paso?
Gabe, when I ran the last time, I said my biggest goal and desire was to make sure El Paso had a seat at the table. And I think it did that. I think by being placed on appropriations as a freshman, I showed that was capable. Appropriations is probably the most important committee in the House of Representatives. We are a Republican state, whether we like to admit it sometimes in El Paso or not. Every major statewide office is held and will continue to be held by a Republican. The majority of the legislature, it went from 76, 74 Republicans in 81 in the 81st session in the House to 102, 48. So we are a dominant party. I think that it behooves El Paso to have within our delegation at least one of us representing the majority party in the state of Texas, to at least participate in those caucuses and open some doors that maybe would not have otherwise been opened because of our makeup as all Democrat.
Right.
I also said I'd get along fine with all of the delegation, who, as you know, are 4 other Democrats. And I would say, by all evidence, including an editorial in the El Paso Times last year, said we all did. And we did. And I was greatly honored to be in service with Representative Pickett and Representative Marquez and Representative Gonzalez, and at the time Chinta Quintanilla, and now Mary Gonzalez. And I look forward to hopefully going back and continuing that. So I think it's safe to say, in the simplest way, I didn't hurt anything, and I think I was helpful. But I also said what I said I was going to do was get us a seat at the table and represent El Paso as best I could.
Perfect. Alrighty. Now, where can they find you online? And then we'll let you go, sir, because we've kept you here a little bit longer than what we talked about before. Where can they find you online, sir?
At deemargo.org. DEEMARGO.org.
Okay, and do you have any other social media sites? Are you on Facebook or on Twitter, or?
We're on all of them.
Oh, perfect. Okay. Well then, Mr. Margo, thank you again for spending time with us here on the Common Man Show. I really appreciate you coming here with us, and I'm hoping that if those that have watched and that are going to listen have taken a little bit more extra about understanding who you are, and I hope that they get a better understanding of your campaign. So I'm hoping that if anything happens, that we get to talk to you again. If something comes up in the future where we are able to have a discussion between yourself and Mr. Margo, I would love to have the opportunity to do this here on this platform so that we can have even a wider variety of individuals to listen to both you and your candidate and your competition talk about the issues.
Gabe, I'm happy to and I'm sure Moody and I will debate on many occasions, as we have in the past. So look forward to it. I'm sure we can get something arranged.
Excellent. Well, Mr. Moody, I'm sorry, my apologies. Mr. Margo, I thank you again for spending time with us. Once again, I thank you again for taking time out of your busy day with us here, and we hope to talk to you very soon.
Look forward to it. Thank you, Gabe.
All right, you take care.
Bye.
Okay, bye-bye. And folks, that was our discussion with Mr. Dee Margo, and I apologize for calling him Mr. Moody. He's not Mr. Moody. He's not Joe Moody. He's Dee Margo. But we just had a great discussion about the Dee Margo campaign that's going to be coming up for election cycle 2012. Folks, we are going to go ahead and wrap things up here. We've got some other stuff that we got to take care of. If you guys notice, we had some slight technical difficulties at the beginning that we are going to be looking into to try to find out where those issues were coming up. But we want to thank you for spending time with us. We want to thank Andrea Chavez, who is the campaign manager for Dee Margo, and we also want to thank Representative Dee Margo for spending time with us. Folks, this is the Common Man Show coming to you straight from Austin, from the inner sanctum sanctorum, and we want to thank our sponsor that has helped our way here with the Common Man Show. We want to thank the Scoop in El Paso with their continued support for bringing us here and bringing us to this platform that you see here on Ustream. So, folks, we're going to call it a night. We're going to go ahead and let's call it a night, and we will see you guys actually on Wednesday when we continue with the Common Man Show at its normally scheduled date. So, folks, on behalf of us here in Austin and on behalf of the Scoop in El Paso, thank you again for spending time with us. And we will see you guys very soon. You guys take care.